This is Nerd Hat.
This is Nerd Hat.
This is Nerd Hat.
Nerd Hatters, welcome to another bonus episode of the Nerd Hat Podcast. I am here with two guests that I met during the RiverRun International Film Festival, Joshua Ling and Kate Price, right? I saw your last name earlier today. I was like, I know I'm going to get that wrong. Kate Price, okay.
Yes.
They are the co-directors, and Kate is the writer. Did you both work on the writing, or mostly you the writing, Kate, and then you directed together?
Yes, yeah.
Yes. Well, they worked together to produce the film Mooncat. It's a short film that featured right before Battersea on the second night of the RiverRun Film Festival. And I caught that with my sister. And that was pretty cool. I didn't get to meet you all beforehand, but we met later at the filmmaker party, and that's how this happened. So thanks for coming on the Nerd Hat Podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Well, I thought we'd start with a little bit of personal background. Kate, I guess we'll start with you, and then you, Josh. And obviously, there's going to be some overlap since you all are siblings. So feel free, to find your own rhythm, go back and forth, however you want to handle the questions. But kind of directed at you, Kate, first. And are you all from this area originally? North Carolina is your home now, obviously, but just where do you come from?
Yeah, come from North Carolina, specifically Greensboro. So haven't ventured too far out of there. We're currently in High Point, or I'm currently in High Point with my husband. And so born, raised, stayed, all of the things, North Carolina.
Nice.
Yeah, and I lived in Winston-Salem for probably about 11, maybe 12 years, actually.
Okay.
I just moved back. I'm kind of just inside Greensboro now, but I still work in Winston. Yeah, obviously, I grew up in Greensboro, same as Kate.
Okay.
I didn't live somewhere else. I wasn't a secret sibling.
So our Winston's, I guess, sister city is the right term, and I guess I don't know if we're supposed to be triplets, because High Point is like the...
High Point is just High Point.
High Point is High Point. I know it's the triad. And so, Winston, Greensboro, High Point. Well, so how did you all get into... I mean, I know most of us obviously watched TV movies growing up, so that's part of so many people's stories. But was there anything specific that piqued y'all's interest in the idea of filmmaking? Was that further back in the past? Was that more recent?
That's a really good question. Yeah, I mean, I think we definitely stemmed from a love of storytelling first in all of its forms, and it's kind of how we were raised up, was just about pretty much everything that we did for fun was centered around stories, whether it being listening to audiobooks as a family and on long drives, or going to the dollar theater down the road, or watching, movies at home. It was kind of all centered around telling stories and ingesting stories. And so we definitely come from a real deep love there, and kind of moved to trying to see if we could do it ourselves.
Yeah, and I think we always kind of played, just growing up, just making our own stories using our imaginations in that way. I can remember making pretend movies with our childhood friends kind of in their backyard, and let's make our own Star Wars, or let's make our own Indiana Jones story, but we have to write it out. We had a friend who was very meticulous, and so I think it just always has been a part of how we interact with the world.
Yeah, we never had a camcorder or anything, but it was we would set up shots, and then, there was always the director who was kind of blocking us, but there was never any camera involved, because we never had those resources. But it was basically how we played.
Nice. I remember doing a little bit of that myself. I never did do too much with the camera, but just imagining myself in a movie. I even made up a character and made up an entire film career for this character at one point when I was little. Yeah. Well, I'm curious how long or how far back your involvement with RiverRun goes. Have you all attended the festival in the past? Was this some of your first experience with RiverRun? Josh, I know you work with the Arts Council. Is that correct? So I imagine you've had a decent amount of interaction with RiverRun over the years. Would that be a safe assumption?
Yeah. And I think RiverRun was kind of one of the first things I did, kind of moving to Winston-Salem, just going because it was such a big part of the downtown community. And as we were trying to plug in, as soon as we moved there, I think it was just really fun to feel that festival environment in a city that was new, so it felt really fresh. So I've been probably several years just going to see shows, and then with working at the Arts Council, also being involved in kind of some of the helping set up for the past, I think, 2 years, making sure everything ran smooth. But I've seen so many cool films just because of RiverRun being available.
An Arts Council, they're based right there in kind of the same building as the Road Center, correct? They're in downtown?
Yep. We have the Film Road Center and then the Haynes Brands Theater as well.
Yeah, I thought so. My wife and I have kind of been in and around that. She works at Sawtooth.
Oh, yeah.
Right up on the other side there. So kind of in and around the Arts Council over the years with her art. I don't know if you can't see it in this shot, but like there's some on either side of me.
Nice.
That's amazing.
Well, Kate, I know you're the screenwriter for Mooncat. How far back I see quite a few books behind you there, and I see you very carefully placed them. And is that a typewriter I see behind you as well, or is that?
It is, yeah.
Yes. Nice.
Yeah, it doesn't work technically.
But hey, no, but that's an awesome.
It could with more love than I have to give it, probably. Yeah, I think again, just kind of stemming out of love for ingesting stories and kind of trying my hand at telling stories. I think I've always been drawn to that, and Mooncat was kind of our just us getting together and saying, let's try it. So this Mooncat was my first screenplay. So
okay,
had no idea what I was doing, and just kind of we jumped into it, and yeah,
it was fun. I guess it's been about 5 years since we first started talking about doing this, and originally it was, I think, 2.5 pages of a montage story that
no dialogue.
We're just going to film it. And we're like, what if we filmed this and then just like put it up on Instagram or something? It's like, oh, yeah, great, let's do that. And then it just kept growing because Kate really just cares about characters and finding ways to make those characters grow and come to life. And I think we spent so much time just like reading and talking about the characters, and then she would like we leave, and then she'd text me like, I have something to tell you, I wrote more, and there's a lot more dialogue now, and we need to get a beer and talk about it. And just kind of growing and evolving in that way, just in the way that we love talking about stories so much. We talked about this and in the same way, which really helped it grow into what it was. The characters change and develop into more fully realized people, and I think Kate just did such an incredible job. One, being open to talk about them critically in some ways and also lovingly in others, and it be something that then she took back with her and grew again, which I think was just so fun and special.
Yeah, it's really the process of Mooncat as a whole can really be boiled down to how we wrote it as well. As it was incredibly collaborative, and that was kind of what we were going for. And so it really did just naturally progress and get bigger and bigger, starting like we said from that 2.5, 3-page thing that we were like going to shoot on a weekend and maybe throw up on YouTube or Instagram or something. And we're going to just, that was all it was going to be, to talking about the characters and what's motivating them. And I would just, I had so much fun talking about them. And then I would go home and just write another scene and then come back. And then we would just have that one scene, and then we would all talk about it. And at that point we had our little sister, Michaela, as well as another friend, Desiree, who were kind of, workshopping it with us as the two main characters. And so we would all just talk about it. So it would be, all four of us. And then I would go home so inspired by the conversations we had around these characters, and then write another scene and another scene and another scene until it ended up being the 22-minute short film that we ended up making.
Yeah, that's pretty ambitious for a short film. I just, not that I speak from tremendous experience, but just looking at the ones I got to see at RiverRun, I saw maybe one or two others that were of that length. So that's getting more into like TV episode territory. So that's pretty good.
Yeah, I think it's because we didn't know we were being ambitious. This was the first thing that we have ever done, and it was kind of very intentional about how we were making it, and everybody involved in the process had never done anything like this before, but we had all just wanted to. And so we didn't know what we were doing, and we didn't know that what we were doing was crazy. That kind of helped and hurt in a lot of ways, but helped more so.
Yeah. It definitely felt like there was an element of caring so much about the characters that we wanted their growth to be done justice in some ways, and then it turned into, well, we need to be able to see certain arcs or else it doesn't work in some ways. And that's where we just kind of grew into this maybe a little bit more ambitious short than what we intentionally planned. But like Kate said, we didn't know any better. We did felt like the right choice, which was, I think in the end it was for us.
Well, what point did your two actresses come into play? Were they a part of the process and just like, all right, you're going to be the actors now? Or did you do some auditions? Like how did that, did you just have some friends who were into acting? You're like, hey, can you be in our movie? Like, what was it?
Yeah. When I wrote the original, little tiny 2.5 page, I can't even really call it a script. I think it feels so sad to call it a script. The first two people that I sent it to was Joshua and then also our younger sister, Michaela. And so I had just sent it to her and I was like, I wrote this. That was kind of it. She responded back like, I want to be Izzy. Like, I want to try it. Can I try? And I was like, absolutely. And then when I brought it to Josh, I was like, what do we do about Helen?
Yeah. And then at the time I thought of my really, really good friend Desiree, who Kate mentioned earlier, who really kind of spent, I guess, like almost a year, like workshopping, maybe longer, I can't remember now, but workshopping and we would do table reads and we would do like blocking stuff and we would kind of work on scenes together. And as a part of that, like collaborative, let's find who these characters are and how it works with your voice, just because she had never acted before either. And then some things happened and she wasn't able to do the actual filming once it came time to film it. So then we were scrambling because we had already locked in dates. So we were trying to find someone to do that. And then I remembered my good friend, Kat, who ends up playing Helen in the film. I remember that she had done some film work and some acting in college and had done a little bit since then. And, I just texted her and I said, this is a long shot. We're shooting this in 2 weeks. Here's a script. I think you would be perfect, actually. And she ended up being great. And she read it and was like, I love this. And let me triple check that I can not do anything else for 5 days. and it worked out. It was crazy. We didn't know what we were going to do if that didn't work. And I think Kat just really came in and really embodied everything that we had worked on with Desiree and how the character had grown so much and all the love that Kate put into writing that character specifically, and then brought so much of herself to it as well, which I just, so many of her scenes are like just make me cry thinking about him as an older sibling as well. Just, it felt like it was right.
Yeah, and I was going to say that to clarify for our listeners. So Helen is the older sister. There's two sisters. Maybe for our listeners, we probably should give a little synopsis of the film. Probably should have done that to start with. I'll definitely put that in the description as well, just to include that. But maybe for our listeners, just kind of give an overview of the story of the film. So you have two sisters at the center of it. But how would you describe the story?
I was waiting to see if you would jump in.
Nope.
We kind of are like one sentence description is about two sisters who love each other very much in maybe not the most healthy ways, but through the course of this story take kind of one step into learning how to love each other in a more healthy way and loving them for who they actually are instead of just the roles that we can play for each other. But as far as like a synopsis go, it's a younger sister and who reaches out to her older sister needing to kind of be saved from a situation. And the sister swoops in as it comes to, you come to realize this isn't a one-time thing. And they stay together for, the course of like 2-ish weeks so that this takes place. Through that, learning to think who they really are and not just who they are to each other and moving through that. I don't know, Josh, it's hard to talk about sometimes.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and I think as they kind of have the hard conversations around the ways in which they're currently acting out certain roles for each other, they learn to just take one step back and kind of view themselves how maybe they want to be viewed, and then how they can view the other person in a more holistic and loving way. It doesn't end with them being fully there, but I don't think that's true to life most times anyway. So
yeah, we don't
one
have
step closer to healthy.
don't have full house endings at the end of an episode in real life, at least not very often. In 22 minutes, let's solve this problem.
It's a lifelong problem.
Yeah. So with Helen, like in the sisterly dynamic, Helen being the older sister, Izzy the younger, like you said, Izzy having some issues with a partner. I took it as domestic abuse situation, or at the very least verbal emotional abuse situation that she needed to get away from. And I can imagine, and it seemed like maybe y'all tried to portray this in the film, that Helen feels a bit like the parent in that situation of like, oh, I've got to take care of my younger sister. And like, she loves her sister and she wants to help, but is also frustrated having to, that's how I took it. Like, and I'm also an older sibling as well. I have 2 younger sisters, but like, there have been seasons when I was growing up where I kind of had to be like a third parent, some by necessity. But, and you mentioned, Josh, that you tried to transition that a little bit. That was one of the character arcs, is that Izzy, and forgive me, it's been a minute since I've seen it, so I'm trying to recall how it goes, but Izzy kind of learns to stick up for herself a little more and start doing more for herself. And then Helen, also, I noticed you made her kind of a lapsed writer, that she had kind of gotten away from that, and that her sister challenges her to get back to that. Did you, even though I know you're a younger sibling, Kate, with the writing piece, I suppose every writer puts a little bit of themselves into their characters. Was that kind of the thinking there a little bit? It's like, well, I'll put a little bit of myself. I'm going to make her a writer, but she needs to get back to it.
Yeah, I think, there's parts of, I'm one of 5 siblings, Joshua's the oldest. I am right in the middle. And so there's very much a lot of parts of all of us in both of the characters. And I think especially being the middle child, I kind of am, there are all my worst parts probably in both Helen and Izzy, and that's very much something that, as a writer, it's hard not to do. But I think the idea is like, she's very pragmatic. She's very logical. She is very looking for the most controlled way to live her life. And having something that, there's something audacious about being any kind of artist. And so to have that kind of deep down that she's suppressed and gone the like more practical route, we played around with several different, versions of what it was that she had, or what versions of that dream, the dream deferred or the dream suppressed would be. And it kind of really boiled down to logistics of what was really easy to do. And especially like there are some flashbacks sequences with the characters as young children. And so we played around with like, well, what if she's a musician? But we wanted to have that dream deferred be present in those flashbacks. And so it was very easy to have a 9-year-old read from a storybook to a 3-year-old versus trying to have them, have her strum a guitar or something, Yeah. So it kind of came down to logistics, but the idea behind it would just be that there was a dream suppressed that Izzy could help pull out of her. Yeah.
So, Josh, did you get to put a little bit of yourself into Helen being the oldest yourself? You mentioned that you related to aspects of the character being the older sibling. And Kate, obviously, you're the older sister, so there's elements there too. But like in your collaboration on the scripts and stuff, did you feel like you got to? It's like, yeah, that's probably what the oldest would say right there, or things like that.
Maybe not directly. I don't think.
Not consciously, maybe.
Not consciously, yeah. I think I tried to focus more on kind of overarching ways in which we could ensure that the characters had a growth. But I tried to let Kate fully express kind of the dialogue and the ways in which she wanted those characters to speak. I think that was really important to me, just as she is the writer. I have not, that is not my strong suit. And so I think just like, okay, let's just spitball about what these characters are feeling in that moment, which I think is like more what I got really excited about. And I think more what I like to talk about in that process. So maybe indirectly or not consciously, but I think Kate just did such a good job knowing how siblings speak to each other. I think that's one of the things we talk about quite a bit when we see sibling-based movies or shows. And it's like, I don't think these people have siblings. It's easy to spot when they don't.
The person who wrote it.
Yeah. I think that's an only child.
Yeah, I think, Joshua is so good at analyzing, and he's so good at talking about stories, and he's so good at talking about characters and knows story structure so well. And so there were things where I would come, there is another character that we haven't mentioned, Dan, who is the partner of Izzy, that comes into play. And he did not exist in many iterations of the script, and I just kept feeling like there's something that there has to be a catalyst, and I couldn't, I was trying to figure it out, and I was like, I don't know, maybe the X comes in and there's, whatever, but I didn't really know necessarily. I knew it needed to happen. I didn't know why. I didn't know how. And I just talked to Josh, and I was like, I don't know. And I had him like drunk and really like crazy, and like, because I was just like, something has to happen here. And it, I couldn't get it right. And I just presented this idea to Josh because I was like, something with this character has to exist, but I don't know what it is. And he very immediately was like, Dan is Helen's mirror character, and that's why he has to be in here. But the way that you've written him is terrible. So let's talk about this character. Let's talk about what he would like, what his motivations are, how he would, express that. And so even if he didn't technically write any of the words, it is very much of a full collaboration. And like, I wouldn't have gotten where I ended up without those conversations.
Yeah, I did really feel strongly about Dan being more in the film. He shows up and he's just kind of very even keel. He's not aggressive feeling, but that there's obviously some kind of toxicity in his relationship with Izzy. And I thought it would be more powerful for Helen's character if she's confronted with someone who's also trying to control her younger sister in ways that maybe she isn't as toxic, but she is still trying to be like, you need to do this, you need to get this job, you need to conform to my ideas of what growing up and being an adult looks like, and that's security and that's safety above all other things, and very rigid. And so if this other person also has this sort of control, however the viewer wants to describe what that is or think about what that is for themselves, but it is like, okay, he's got to somehow express that, and Helen has to be confronted with it, because then she'll be allowed to move on. And also Izzy can then move on in some ways as well, if she's able to somehow have that confrontation for herself.
Yeah, we needed Helen to have to look at it in the eyes. Richard, you said it, and it's very true about being parentified. And that is definitely Helen's character taking that on. And it's also very much just when you love someone so much and you see that they're in a cycle of maybe bad choices, and you just are like, I could do it so much better for you. And you just want to like take their life on for them, because it's out of love. You love them so much and you want them to have the best, and you want them to, not be stuck in these bad cycles. And so, yeah, that is a very noble thing to want for the people that you love. So she really had to be confronted and look it in the eyes of someone that she definitely does not like, and can see the harmful things about what it does to a person if they're never allowed to kind of feel like they have the opportunity or have the ability in themselves to make a good choice. If their whole life it's just been, well, you're not going to make the good choice, so I'll make it for you. Like, what does that do to a person other than make them carry around that mythos about themselves and also not really be able to do anything outside of that? So yeah, she had to stare it in the eyes.
Nice. I think that was a good choice, and the actor you got, and even down to the clothes that he wore and his body language, gave off the definitely like kind of covert narcissist vibe of like, yeah,
definitely.
It's like
that narcissistic arrogance, and yeah, I think it worked really well. And
I know in real life relationships, they tend to target either consciously or subconsciously codependents, like people that have that pattern. And yeah, it's gonna be so hard to break out of too, like just from what I understand.
Yeah. And we wanted to, I think, kind of like with Mooncat, showing that codependency that you do sometimes create in sibling and familial aspects of those coping mechanisms that you developed as children, of how you survived, that was really good for you when you were children, but how when you get stuck in them, it's harmful, and how to have that like deep, intense love of siblings, and recognize though that the way that it currently is unhealthy, because you are codependent, and to both take a step out of that together. It's hard, but it's worth it to try to learn how to re-love each other in a way that isn't codependency.
Nice. Well, I think that's a good message. So I'm curious, at what point did y'all get the screenplay and kind of the plans for the film set enough there, like, okay, now it's time to actually plan this, it's time to actually set a shoot date, it's time to get a crew? I don't know if you had already had the crew together at that point, they've been helping in other ways, but like in terms of like, all right, we're doing this thing, we're going to do it this year, we got to find a location. So you said that kind of the whole process was about 5 years. At what point in that did you reach the point where like, okay, we're ready to do this thing?
Extreme, I think, desperation to make sure that we completed it. I think we got to a point where like, okay, it's been written. We're at a good place with where we have it. We're not doing any more rewrites, mostly. And it's like, if we don't shoot it now, we won't. And so I think we just we said, okay, we're going to pick these days. We think we can get it done in 5 days, which was, again, for people that didn't really know how to do this, that was also incredibly ambitious. But we just said we have to. And it's, again, that feeling of like, okay, we started this because we wanted to create something so badly. And we've hit the point where we've done all of the easy parts and we haven't done the scary part yet. And if we don't just do the scary part, it won't ever happen, and that would be incredibly sad. So yeah, and then I think we knew that we would. I mean, Kate and I were always going to co-direct it together, and then we knew that her husband Steven does audio work for his job. I'm going to butcher this part, but so we knew that he was on board. We could talk him into it because he loves Kate so very much, and he also loves me because he loves Kate so much. And then Kate had 2 great friends from Portland that are now 2 of my great friends that I think she jokingly said, hey, do you want to come and do this? And they bought plane tickets from Portland, and we're like, all right, we're coming, and we'll crew. And
nice.
That was kind of our crew. And then my sister's fiance, Chris, was also there holding boom mics, and Kate and I were all the camera opping and photography, and it was just like, that was our crew.
Yeah. It was very much like what we talked about with being kids playing, and all of us just said, let's do this. My husband, Joshua said, like, does sound mixing, so he was a professional, but none of the rest of us are or were. But I think part of that was really intentional from our point of view of like, one, to just be completely honest, this was a 0 budget film. Everything that we used was things that we already owned. There was a few things that were like lent to us that we borrowed from friends, but all of the cameras, all of the lighting equipment, all of the grip, most of the sound equipment, all of it was, we had to use what we owned, or we figured out a different way to do it. So it was very much just this homegrown thing of and it was the great experiment. Like, had this group of friends just make something, and we had no idea if we could. But every day we came to set and we were like, well, let's try it again today. We got something last time, so maybe it'll work again. And, so our crew was just our friends. Again, people, professionals in their own world, most of them in audio, but not ever having been on set before. And yeah, so we were learning how to light a scene as we were lighting the scene to capture, which is an interesting way to do it. It's maybe not necessarily recommended if you have any other way to do it, but there is something to say about a ragtag group of friends stepping up to the plate and trying to hit a ball. So
yeah, it was there's something so like family oriented about the way that we even created this too, where it felt like everybody was there just to make something, and we were gonna. It was very stressful at times. It was really hard at times. It was long days at times and tiring and exhausting. But everyone was still just like, oh, what if we did this? What if, would this work? What if that, if you shot it this way, that might be cool. Let's try that one time. And it was just this very collaborative effort. And it really made things stand out in a way that I think if we just hired people we didn't have money to hire anyone, but it just felt like, oh, this might not be the correct way to do it, but we're going to do it this way because this makes sense to us, and then we'll figure out the right way as we go. And then while Kate and I were editing, we found the wrong ways more often than not.
Yeah, it's like
this was day one, I think.
Yes, I think when we did it right, it was because we stumbled into it, maybe. But it was still such a fun experience. And yeah, I mean, it makes me laugh every time I watch the credits roll and see, on the crew there's 6 names and 3 of those are in the audio department. So it's really fun, but it felt a little bit like summer camp, and it felt like playing. It absolutely felt like playing. I think there wasn't a phrase I said more that week than, okay, let's try it. Someone had an idea, let's try it. Did it always work? No. Most of the time it didn't. But a lot of times it led us down the path to something that did work. But yeah.
That's really cool. One of the reasons I love hearing the behind the scenes, I mean, I've always been kind of nerdy for that, but I just love hearing the behind the scenes. And it's always so encouraging. I mean, so many, even of like the huge filmmakers like your Steven Spielbergs and whatnot, started out doing things very small, just with friends. I mean, he's a little older, so he had an 8mm camera. Just doing it out in the. I think, if I remember the stories correctly, just doing it out in his backyard with buddies. And then just so many other people, and they learn as they go. And some of them go to film school along the way, and some of them don't. It's like, I don't think James Cameron, as far as I know, ever went to film school. I could be wrong about that, but I think he just kind of learned on the job and worked his way up, so to speak, and then at some point you just got to grab it by the horns and like, we're doing this. So yeah, that's pretty awesome. Well, congratulations for getting this done. Just kind of in our last little segment here, did you plan, like as you were finishing it, did you plan on submitting to RiverRun, or did that come later in like post-production phase, or was that kind of a goal all along? Like how did that come about?
Yeah, I think it was a goal all along. It was basically, we're going to submit to this as a incentive to finish it, so we had, it gave us a deadline to work towards. It gave us, just a goalpost at the end. So that was kind of our goal, to just have a stamp of like, we did it. We made something and we finished it, and we feel good enough about it to submit it. So
yeah, and I think it was a big part of like that desperation to finish it. And it's like, okay, if we don't shoot it, it will just be this thing that we never finished or followed through with. And in order to ensure that happens, we are setting ourselves a goal of submitting it to RiverRun. So we need to set shoot dates. We need to be able to edit it, and we need to get it submitted before December 15th. So there was a lot of like, okay, let's just go for it, and we have to go for it. And I think there's just a lot of that. Kate and I share this similar drive, I think, of needing to do those creative things and needing to have some form of creative outlet. And sometimes those things are big, scary things. Sometimes they're a little simpler, like shooting our sisters, our nieces, like there's different levels to it. But this was something that just felt like it had to happen. And a good way to force ourselves to do that was to give deadlines and hope that it would be accepted, because I think even if it wasn't accepted, it still would have been such a great thing, and we were so excited when it was done. And when we finished the edit, it felt like all of this was definitely 100% worth it, even if that little edit that we watched on Kate's TV was all that ever happened with it would have been enough.
I love that. Art for art's sake, right? Love the process, or do it for the process, I guess.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Big proponent for doing it for the process.
1,000.
And I think that's where I know when you're trying to do it for a living, there's always the tension, and even the bigger filmmakers talk about this, and the actors and whatnot. There's the tension of like, well, I need to make something that'll make money. So I know some people, they have to alternate between the moneymaker and the passion project, as it were. But yeah, like one of the things I loved about RiverRun was getting to see just so many of those passion projects that people had made, some in similar ways to y'all, like with like no budget, and we're making it together. Some in film school, some with a budget. I mean, just all over the place. But just seeing the love that people pour into that has been really encouraging. So zooming forward to where we almost met. We were in the same theater together. How did it feel seeing it? Was that, I mean, I'm assuming that's the first time you'd seen it up on a big screen. How did that feel?
We had actually a few months before, for our birthdays are like a few days apart, years, but a few days in the month apart. And so we did a big showing for just the people that were in it and the people that made it and their friends and family and our friends and family. So we got to see it at what theater was it?
Reynolds Place Theater at
Nice.
Arts Council.
So we got to see it there, and that was
there then. Nice. Okay,
that was really fun to just have, and that felt very special just for us. And this kind of big, like, woo, we did it, like, and to do that for the people that were in it and who made it with us was really fun. And so then getting to see it though at Marketplace, which was so reminiscent of that, dollar theater that we grew up going to.
I think I've been to that one. If it's the one I'm thinking about over there in like Greensboro, High Point, I think I went to that one once or twice.
Yeah, it was the one in Greensboro was real close to our house. So that was kind of our typical haunt. But so to see it in a real theater that smelled like, decades of popcorn and had a sticky floor and, all of those things that make you feel like just nostalgic for the experience of being in a movie theater and, getting to be kind of anonymous. Nobody knew who we were. It was so cool getting to be screened in front of Battersea, and so a lot of people were for that film, and it kind of felt like we were just like sneaking in the in the front half, and just getting to kind of like sit back and hearing laughter at some of the parts that that were maybe a little funny. They thought they were funny. I don't, I was like, oh, okay, this is pretty cool. Like we got to experience, seeing our film with other people seeing it and their natural reactions to it was really fulfilling. So I really liked just getting to be anonymous and
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. There was something so special about, again, being in a movie theater that is just a movie theater. Reynolds Place Theater was very nice to see our film in, but it was also, they do so many different things in that space. And then to like come to the magical, for however corny and cheesy it is, but that magical environment of being in a movie theater, the place that we've spent so much time and being so inspired by so many different kinds of movies, and then to just get to sit back and, like Kate said, it was really nice to not be known, because when I was with our friends and family, that was a really special and sweet and emotional time. But it was also nice to hear, there's always that little bit of like, oh, did they really think that was funny, or are they just my friend, my mom, so it was nice to hear this is landing with people that have no emotional investment into what we've done, which was like, yeah, that was really special and really surreal and crazy. I think I thought about it for like a couple of days, being like, I don't know how to express that feeling, but it was very cool.
Well, it seems appropriate that it showed at Marketplace. It's a family-run cinema as well. They've been running it together for over 20 years. And it used to be, I don't know if you'll ever saw a movie there back in the day, but it used to be the 250 theater was kind of what it was known as, because they would get once the main theaters were done with them, they would get the reels. You'd see them sitting out in the lobby sometimes, secondhand. So you'd see it 2 months into a movie showing. You go there and see it if you hadn't seen it yet, or you just wanted to see it again for $2.50.
I love that.
They're not allowed to do that anymore, sadly. But they're still a great place to go catch a film. So, but yeah, it seems appropriate that family run, and this is definitely a family project. I mean, family and friends, but definitely. Yeah. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's great.
Well, is there a future for the film? Do you all plan to, or have you already, maybe I missed it, but have you put it up on YouTube? Do you have any plans for doing anything with it further? submitting to other festivals, maybe?
Yeah, we've submitted to a couple of other festivals, and we're kind of, I think we'll hear back. The last one that we'll hear back, the notification date is what I'm looking for. The notification date is about the early June, so we're holding off on putting it out online until we hear back from them. But then, we'll probably just put it up so that everyone can see it.
There you go. Well, cool. Well, we'll hopefully, fingers crossed, y'all get accepted. That'd be really cool. I imagine are these out of state? You get to travel for it if you get accepted, or cool?
Yeah. All the rest are out of state.
Nice.
Well,
nice.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Well, good luck with that. And either way, I'm assuming eventually it'll be available for our listeners to catch. So we'll try to give you all a shout out on our Instagram if and when that happens. And I know some festivals like RiverRun are doing the virtual on the back end too. So like people from all over the world could potentially, like if it comes up as an option for that. So I know that's becoming more common too. All right. Well, Kate and Josh, it was nice to meet you and get to know you all a little bit better through this interview. Thank you for coming on to the Nerd Hat podcast. And good luck with both the future of Mooncat and with any other future ventures.
Yeah,
awesome.
Thank you so much for having us. This was great.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It was a great time.
Nerd Hat!